Hello and welcome to episode 10 of Hardcore Gaming 101.net's top 47,858 games of all time podcast, where we objectively and definitively rank the games you nominate. My name is Xerxes, and I'm in the pocket of Big Velcro. Not anymore. With me today are...
I'm Bob Mater.
I'm Carl.
And I am Sotanga.
On this podcast, we have but three rules. Pravidlo číslo jedna. All rankings are final, official, and scientifically accurate. Pravidlo číslo dvě. You can nominate games 3 at a time via Twitter by hitting me up at GC9X on Twitter. Pravidlo číslo tři. You can nominate games that have already been nominated, but please don't nominate games we've already ranked. So our first game for the show is Ikaruga, which was nominated by at Soulhof, Soulhouf, a longtime friend of the show on Twitter. And this is it's I don't know what to say about this one. Let's run through the details here.
What to say about Ikaruga? Like the almost unquestioned best game by the almost unquestioned pinnacle of shmup creators. Yeah, I think that's a tough one to talk about. Pinnacle,
that would be what?
Pinnacle.
The pinnacle of shooter developers. You're talking about.
I don't know.
What game are we talking about? 2? What are we? No.
I don't.
We're already off to a fantastic start here.
No, okay. So it's developed by Treasure. It was released.
That's right, Treasure.
in arcades on. Released in arcades in Japan. Yeah, December 20th, 2001. So just barely 2001.
Did this one see an arcade release outside of Japan? Because I don't really remember seeing it.
Sure, it did.
I think it stayed entirely in Japan for the arcades. Same as its spiritual predecessor, Radiant Silvergun.
Right. But it was released for Dreamcast in Japan, nowhere else. Probably it used the same. Was it using the same kind of basic hardware for that? Or
the Naomi board? Yeah, I think so.
It was later released for GameCube, which I think did get a U.S. release. And
by Atari, of all people.
Yeah.
Or Infogrames, whatever.
Doesn't matter.
And it got a recent Steam release, which currently is on sale, but probably won't be by the time you actually listen to this. So,
I don't know. It should be out. We might be able to...
The sale ends July 4th. So.
July 4th, that's right. I haven't bought anything.
Still get it anyway, or it's a good port.
I'm being very disciplined this year. I haven't bought anything because I barely touched my queue. So
I did the same thing, but I actually bought something. So forget about me.
I kind of nuts.
I bought too much. That's well, I guess we're talking about shmup and not our purchasing habits right now. But
before we go, I still have some carefully researched on Wikipedia facts to raise. Interesting thing I thought about this was that it was actually a lot of the programmers working on it were contracted out by G.Rev, who did this specifically to raise money, or so it goes. So it's said that it was done to raise money to make Border Down. Which is another very high concept shooter of that era.
That's a game I'd really love to see on Steam, but one step at a time.
I think if you have a Dreamcast but don't feel like paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars to import Ikaruga or Border Down, there's somebody went ahead and made a ISO of both games in one disc, which. That's how I played it. So
but we shouldn't condone.
I do in this case because they only made like 50,000 copies, and they were only sold in Japan, and they cost
Border Down is $1 billion. I would pirate the hell out of Border Down.
It's only
the GameCube version of this particular game we're talking about.
The GameCube might be the most, like, of all the official releases that aren't digital. It's probably the easiest one to find.
But it's like there's a Dreamcast release and there's a GameCube release.
If you have a Dreamcast and you're not just like burning any import game that you want, like, you're an idiot, because nobody is. Now for the Ikaruga though, like, if you want to play that one, because Border Down isn't on Steam, I don't believe. So that's probably the best way to get Border Down.
It's only half illegal.
Right, yeah. I mean, right. So,
hey, let's talk about Ikaruga.
Well, we just weren't talking about anything useful or interesting. So it's, I mean, who wants to explain this game? It's a Danmaku, it's a bullet hell type shooter, kind of kicked off not kicked off the genre, because we did just talk about Armed Police Batrider, which is kind of like a forebear to the genre at least. But it's got this interesting polarity mechanic, which allows you to, when you press a special button, you change the polarity of your spacecraft, and that allows you to not be damaged by projectiles of that polarity, which is making it sound a lot more complicated. Basically, there's like orangey black bullets that are fired at you and whitey blue bullets that are fired at you. And if you're on one polarity, you're going to be able to you'll only be damaged by the whitey blue ones, and if you're the other polarity, you'll only be damaged by the orangey black ones.
Yeah, but go ahead, Bob.
I think it's a cool idea, especially because I like the moments when you're getting like a huge beam shot you and just kind of absorb, and you get all the energy you need for your special attack.
Yes, your special attack is tied to your absorbing bullets.
Right.
That's an important mechanic.
Middle of a beam, it just rockets upward.
And I believe the gimmick is you do your scoring mechanic is tied to which side you're on. I think you get no score or something from destroying same color projectiles or something.
No, you need every group of three of the same color gives you like a extending 100 points each. But if you ever shoot one a different color, you lose your chain.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was. Yeah, you could only do chain score. You could only rack up chain bonuses.
I am really poor at that, so usually when I'm in a panic, I generally just hear a robot voice just spamming the phrase one chain, repeatedly, because they expect us to be precise and destroy these enemies 3 at a time while dodging a myriad army of projectiles. It's boy.
Okay, so let's,
thing?
Yeah.
Even more than Batrider, I'd say this game takes lots and lots of practice to get anywhere good at. And it helps that the game has like a little practice thing, individually practice like any segment of the game. I do appreciate that.
That is super cool. I believe it's also the first game that Treasure ever put out like a DVD of, like a perfect playthrough. Not that really helps you get better at it, but it's at least you can see that it's possible. I'm not really sure what the attraction to that is. I didn't realize that was a thing, but that's another thing I read on Wikipedia about 5 minutes ago.
Well, I was going to say, from what I remember, and to be honest, I haven't played this. I didn't update my playthrough memory for this game. I played it a few years ago. It is quite short, so compared to even like Batrider, it's a short game.
How many stages is it total?
5.
Okay, so I was able to make it through 3/5 of the game.
Yeah, it's very economical. I guess it's one of those games you could say where brevity certainly works in its advantage because, it's relatively breezy and it won't be a slog for you to, like, keep playing these segments and try and perfect them for as high a score as you can possibly get.
Got the practice mode, which makes that even easier.
I made it to mid-stage 3, and that was with 5 lives and the easiest extra life option.
Yeah, that was the same here. I did the 5 lives on easy mode with, which gives you, on the Dreamcast version, gives you 3 credits. Which, by the way, I burned that before it was ever available on Steam, just so you know. Like, I would have bought it on Steam, but...
That's fine. I have it on the Xbox 360.
Yeah, that's another way. Well, is it still available through that, or is it...
I assume so, but I have no idea why you would get it on the 360 when you can get it on a PC.
It's kind of silly to talk about, because if you're a bigger fan than me of this kind of shooter, then you probably already have this game. So.
I do. Yeah, and it is, I'd say, definitely one of the best shoot-em-ups currently out there on Steam. As a sidebar, I think the number 1 is Eschatos, but we're not talking about that one. So, but no, it's not to put down Ikaruga. It's probably one of the very few shoot-em-ups for such a really niche genre that I'm willing to bet a lot of game players would be able to easily recognize. It's almost up there alongside like Gradius and R-Type and what have you. Would you say so?
Well, I mean, no, because it's a very different kind of shooter than Gradius.
True.
And R-Type and Darius.
Well, I mean, the main thing about this game is because of its polarity mechanic, it steps slightly away from what I guess a traditional shmup is, because it requires a whole extra mechanic on top aside from dodging and shooting and using your bombs at the right time. There is kind of like this whole...
There isn't really a bomb, though. I mean, there's the missile thing, but then clear bullets.
You don't get a lot of those either, right?
No.
Like, it's like you could... It almost doesn't matter. Like, the game is very focused on switching quickly back and forth between the polarities.
And for me, if you don't mind if I ran a bit, for me, like, the polarity thing, it makes sense, you know how it works, but I find it really disorienting more than anything, because you've got, like, a million bullets running in both colors, you've got beams coming at you, you've got structures which can also kill you, and it's just, you're constantly switching back and forth, and you're never... A lot of the time, you're just going to kind of forget what color you are and just run into a beam or something, and it just goes on like that.
Well, that's the challenge, though, isn't it?
Right.
Like,
yeah, I mean, that's why it's only 5 stages. It's not...
This game's like 5 stages long, and it takes you a year to beat.
Yeah, let's not beat around the bush. This game is extremely brutal.
Right.
I consider myself decent at shmups, and like I need like practically the free play credits activated to have any chance at this.
Batrider was difficult, but I mean, at least you kind of...
It's a little bit more traditional,
like, one front to deal with.
Right.
All the bullets were bad, and you had to dodge them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in this one, it's not particularly more intense, I think, than Batrider. Although there's a lot of points that where I played the game where it deals with like really super confined spaces, which I do not like in shooters at all. Like dealing with bullets is one thing, but dealing with like really super tiny corridors, it's like
Yeah, this game is
Skywalker. Like it's
real. Very few bullet hell games actually factors of geometry into things, and that makes it pretty tough.
And it gets even like, because you got to explode stuff in your way, like like Gradius games do that a lot, but you have very little space to do it, and you have to make sure that you're the right polarity to do it. And that means that you have to do it when you can aim from a point where you're only being blasted by bullets of the same polarity as the object you're trying to destroy. It really gets complicated, but because it's short and the levels are short, it's doable. I think it's fair.
I don't think it's unquestionable that this one is a fair game. It very rarely will try and it won't just cheap shot you or anything. Generally, you'll screw up because you flipped your polarity, and then you forgot you flipped it, and then you'll drive into a bullet because you think you're one color, but you're the other.
Exactly.
Or you'll get into for me, it was always, I'd get into a pattern of flipping back and forth between polarities, and then I would just nervously flip even when I knew I wasn't supposed to, because I'm just frantically, I keep hitting the button to make it work, and then I just hit it at the wrong time and I die.
Yeah, it's a very fair and gentlemanly game. It lets you know what you're in for before it breaks your legs and then stabs you repeatedly in the lowers, so to speak.
One thing that Treasure's shooters are really good at is working within the control limitations of whatever platform they're on. And so it was a coin op. So it didn't, it knows that you have a degree of control over it that you might not have on a Super NES controller, for example. And so it kind of plays with that. And there's a lot of, the tight spaces stuff. But even nowadays, they basically invented the whole concept of doing bullet hell shooters for touchscreens, for smartphones. They came up with a control scheme for that worked even with their old games. It's not great, but it's probably as good as you're going to get with that interface.
How do those work? I haven't really played.
They have kind of a null field at the bottom of the screen that is your control field, and they just are super careful about how they tweak the sensitivity of that, and it does work. You're moving it's you don't have a virtual joypad, which was or joystick or D-pad, which was very common early on in a lot of smartphone games, where they would just like, oh, well, we'll have like a representation of a physical controls. And they were just like, no. You're just going to be firing constantly. You can't stop. And then you're going to have this like weird little field. And as long as you're moving your thumb within that field, it will register that as a movement. And you just kind of got to get used to how sensitive it is. And you might even be able to tweak the sensitivity of it. But they did a pretty good job. I mean, they made it playable for someone like me who's terrible at these kinds of games. But I digress. Like that's not really the point here. But I feel like Treasure is the kind of developer and publisher who puts that kind of thought into what they do.
Yeah, this game, I want to say, this is going to be a little bit of a controversial statement, and I could be wrong, but this might have been the last truly amazing 100% S-rank release that Treasure has ever done. After this, they kind of started to coast.
I'd probably say you're right. Like, I'd say the Bandicoot games they did after that were pretty okay, but after that, I don't know.
Wait, let me see here.
Really?
Oh, wait. No, my fault. They did develop Gradius 5, and that is also a fantastic shooter. Yeah, it was.
No,
okay.
They did a fair number of good things after this. It's just
all right.
I'm not sure that they coasted so much as they just, probably
I think this would be the last release from Treasure that got like enormous press for being a Treasure game.
Yeah, that's a good point.
This game was all over everything. It was just like, wow, Ikaruga is great. Wow, it's coming out on GameCube. Wow, you can buy it. Get Ikaruga. It's the greatest game ever.
That was like, etc.
Oh God, I forgot.
Style. It came out on all the platforms that probably had the lowest licensing fees. So, it could come out on Dreamcast because it was based around similar hardware, but then didn't go out to PS2. Why? Development fees are probably too high. But in 2003. Development licensing fees, or not development fees, the licensing fees for GameCube were probably pretty damn low because they didn't have any games and it had been out for 3 years at that point. So that's like, yeah, sure, we'll put it out on GameCube. That's a very Treasure thing to do. They did a similar thing with N64 as well, but. I mean, I guess my main problem with the game is not so much, it's not really a problem, but it's kind of a hang up I have about bullet hell shooters, which is that I don't like shooters where I cannot look at the rest of the screen, where I have to focus exclusively on the 3 inches of screen real estate surrounding my character, my ship, which I feel like is a necessity for bullet hell shooters, at least for me. Like maybe there's people who can play these games and looking at the whole screen, but I can't do it.
I think the only way to do that is, to play it 300 times so that you just kind of it's that bit. I remember that bit. And it just kind of...
It makes boss fights really frustrating. And that's when they get the most insane because you're like, you have to hit shoot the core, that kind of thing. But then it's like, well, I can only shoot the core when I'm in front of the core, and I can't be in front of the core 90% of the time because I've got to navigate these mazes of bullets. It's really, really frustrating. And this game makes it, in a way, better, but usually it's more frustrating because you also got to be constantly switching polarities. But in that sense, I feel like because the game gives you something else to do, it might ease up on some of the enemy bullet patterns in a way that other...
I would say this game feels a lot more empowered from a traditional shmup because in this one... You're not constantly dodging bullets in the same way. In this one, every time you switch polarity and then you pick up a bunch of bullets, you're like, yeah, I'm awesome. I can't even get hurt by bullets.
Right. Usually there'll be a wall of bullets of one polarity, and then you'll have a smattering of bullets of the other polarity. But so it gives you you got to get really used to ignoring whatever the polarity is that you can ignore. And rapidly switching gears to do that.
When the game gets hardest is when you're dealing multiple sources of bullets at once, and you can't really, your brain can't keep track of them all at once.
Yeah, I have awful short-term memory, which keeps making me think that I'm on the same polarity from a second and a half ago, and that just...
When you're dealing with a wave of bullets coming at you one direction, that's not really so bad, but you've got 2 beams, 3 waves of bullets from opposite sides of the screen. That's pretty rough.
So I guess we should probably rank this thing.
I wanted to say that.
I know, but I've got to take it back.
Okay, hot take. Maybe not quite as good as Batrider. Am I wrong?
I don't know. That's a hard question because on one hand, Batrider is not nearly as inventive as this game is, but Batrider was also kind of pioneering the subgenre of shooter that this game was iterating.
I gotta step up here. Like, are you gonna seriously though say like UN Squadron is a better shmup than
Cal? What is your beef with UN Squadron? You want to keep downranking it every episode? I disagree. It's well, okay. It's not the most exciting shooter, but it has
to a shooter. And remember, we're talking about the Super Nintendo version of UN Squadron, which is better and different and a little bit has more stuff in it.
Yeah, the arcade version is kind of but the SNES one I think is one of the best shooters.
Below Outrun.
That's not bad. No, wait, that's below Armed. I mean, want to rank it a little higher.
Like 2005, 2006. Ikaruga would be like in the top 10 games because that was the thing to do at the time. Was
right. I mean, but it's not. The game isn't any different. Like, it doesn't play any differently, of course, and it's also, if anything, the average. Not the average gamer, but the average gamer who would listen to this podcast is probably more familiar with and comfortable with these kinds of shooters than they would have been 10 years ago. So I feel like everybody who likes shooters of any kind, like I really like shooters, but I like old school, like Star Soldier kind of shooters. But because of that, I will. I also enjoy, I also try out like the games like this that are like the must play, like you have to try this if you like shooters just to see whether you can get into it. And I mean, I got to admit, like I found this more fun than Batrider just because it had that interesting mechanic. And it's one of those things where it's like, once you've seen it done, it's kind of like, oh, that was obvious. Why didn't anybody else do that? But nobody had thought of it before.
Yeah, and has anyone actually ever really done this gimmick after Ikaruga either?
I have a fan game that it's like a fan sequel where you have 4 polarities. And,
wow, that sounds horrible. No,
I'm just kidding.
Now, I want to say at least one other game did this, but it's not coming to me.
I've played a couple of like Japanese like Dojin indie sort of shmups that include the mechanic because, why not? But
well, Border Down's a good comparison, even though it's not on the list. I mean, I can't remember what Border Down does differently, but I think it's something.
Isn't Border Down's main mechanic is the Border Down, like the title where you get hit instead of dying, you go down to like a lower.
Right. Yeah, that's it. It's very Section Z-esque in a way, although it's less voluntary. But you have a way of clawing your way back. I guess it's a little bit like Gradius in that sense, too.
It is. Borderlands is more traditional, but also has some modern elements in it. Modern when it was. Now I don't even know. I mean, this is ages ago.
Who knows? Yeah.
Ikaruga, I'm sorry, I have to jump in, and I would put it above Alien Soldier. That's where I'm putting it.
Ooh.
That's my opinion. I know I'm going to get thrown under the bus.
It's a great game, but I don't know. That might even be a little high for me at this point. I was going to say, okay, well now this seems too low. I was going to page it between Contra Hardcore and Ranger X, but that's a.
I was thinking between Ranger X and UN Squadron. Like I really would put it above UN Squadron just because.
You know what? I can work with that.
Okay, I was defending UN Squadron a few minutes ago, but I do have to say Ikaruga is definitely a more inventive shooter than it. Lower than Ranger X though. I like Ranger X a lot too.
Really likes Ranger X.
It's a great game.
Ranger X. I feel like Ranger X is more subtly. It's even more inventive, but in a more subtle way because it's working with things that you think you understand. And you really don't. Like, there's a lot going on in Ranger X. There's a lot to master. There's a lot to learn.
Ranger X is also actually beatable for most people without having to turn on free play. So, I think I'll actually agree with you on this one. I don't want to argue the placement of an obscure Genesis game that certainly deserves more credit than than it has.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is everybody's heard of Ikaruga by now.
Exactly.
But, like, seriously, if you like... I feel like people almost come to shooters now through the bullet hell subgenre rather than the way I came to them, which is like basically through Xevious on up, which is very, very different. Like those are the games like Xevious.
Who's gonna play Xevious?
Only me, like only people who are my age. Like somebody should nominate Xevious because I have a lot of. I feel like Xevious is in outside of Japan. I feel like it's a very underappreciated masterpiece.
I mean, it's definitely underappreciated outside of Japan. There's no question.
But anyway, I mean, my point about Ikaruga is this: I feel like it's almost an entry point for a lot of people, which is maybe why shooters have become such a niche genre. So I guess we're stuck with this then. It's going to be between Ranger X and you and Squadron because 3 of the 4 of us can live with that.
I can live with it. I'm not gonna, I don't know, quit everything.
You're not going to rend your garments and go crying into the streets. Lone voice in the wilderness.
Where the hell is this coming
from? Can't play video games anymore. It's all over now.
Okay, so we're done.
I don't mind having like this like interesting little shmup zone we've got going in the list where it's just kind of like this is where we put the shmups.
Well, I mean, the important thing is it's got to be beneath Blue Stinger because there is a noticeable and palpable lack of Dog's Bower or Dog's Bower-esque characters in Ikaruga. So,
or any characters, but that's not really a bad thing.
There's a big backstory for Ikaruga that we didn't mention, right? Like, it has one of those giant...
Yeah, that's the thing about these sorts of light-seeming games, that they have, like, a 20-page elaborate backdrop.
Like Buddhist philosophy or something?
No, I think that might be involved. Something about how the polarity is, like, yin and yang, or, like... I don't know. I know that
the Taoist philosophy.
I know that video game lore really cheeses people off, so we don't want to inflate time by going into it.
Giving lore to a bullet hell shooter is kind of like writing like Bible fan fiction. Like there's just something extraneous about it that just seems like it's beside the point.
I mean,
well, you'd say that, but I'm pretty sure the Toho guy makes tons and tons of money, so. Just saying.
The point of like when you have these shmup stories, like I understand writing them because the people that are making the game probably need some sort of context to build the game on. You know,
They do.
You
have an art director, and the art director's job is to come up with an interesting direction for the art.
Yeah,
and
the art director's like, what am I making?
Like, hey, now that you've got the art direction figured out, let's come up with a story. First of all, they're all 12-year-old girls.
You give it to the art director, and he'd be like, I really like platypuses, so, like, the ships are platypuses, and the characters are platypuses, and then it's like, no, stop, it's about
one of
Buddhism.
Them is Cat Girl Princess Unicorn. The other one is
you never give artists free
an
rein.
anthropomorphic 12-year-old girl airplane. Yeah.
I feel like we're alienating a chunk of our fan base with this somehow, but I don't know what the demographic is.
This is what is it, like Arrow Wings or whatever is what you're pitching?
Arrow Fighters.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the one with the dolphin and the ninja.
That dolphin is great, and I will not hear otherwise.
Name is Spanky. I wish we were talking about that game, but
maybe with that we can kind of wrap this game up.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I almost feel like the side conversation about lore of shoot 'em ups needs to be like a separate entity.
I guess this will be our stinger.
I don't know.
Think of an image to put on the video.
Maybe.
Strike witches. Are we still making fun of strike witches?
Let's not go there.
I mean, I can if I can get to it, I'll draw I'll gotta listen to Xerxes' pitch for the characters, and I'll draw a fake like title screen for the game that doesn't exist.
Awesome. I'll put that in the video footage then.
Surely, a fan out there who's could make an entire Dojin shooter based on our show. So. And we'll rank it too.
Yeah, you should say any fan games will be ranked for the show.
At number 1, if you include Dogs Bower, who was a co-host.
if they put Dog's Bower in the game, you have no choice but to rank it high. That's the problem. You've set this standard where if there's a Dog's Bower character in it, it has to go up.
The standard. The greatness of Dog's Bower set the standard on its own. I just recognize.
Super Mario 3 doesn't have Dog's Bower in it. How do you explain that?
Well, no, because I believe Mario's mustache is sufficiently Dog's Bower-esque to qualify it.
That's reasonable.
Look, Mario and Dog's Bower would get along swimmingly, if you ask me.
Yeah, I have actually no doubt that would be an interesting,
Dog's Bower would show Mario his absolutely Homeric gravity bong that he has in his in the hull of its ship, and it just goes from there. And then Mario's like, "Have you tried the mushrooms?"
See, this actually wrote itself.
Really, it does. Yeah, it's a really weird. It's kind of like a slash fic, except the slash part is just like a mutual drug experience. Our second game for episode 10 is Zookeeper, which was nominated by @TinPotGamer on Twitter, a very long-time fan of our show, a long-time friend of the show, and I'm very, very sad that it took me so long to get to one of the games he nominated. He or she is a man, right? Do you guys remember 10-Pot Gamer?
Yeah. What? Yeah. Sure. I think. No.
10-Pot Gamer's been following us on Twitter for a very long time and always has something funny to say. So I feel really bad because we should have done a game nominated by them much sooner. But anyway, Zookeeper, which was created by Taito of America in 1982 or 1983. I can't figure out which. It's interesting.
3 games that Division made, I think. There was Zookeeper, there was
Kicks,
and Space Dungeon.
Yeah.
Twin-stick shooter game that came up before Robotron. That's interesting.
But they had an actual... I don't think Kicks counted. I think Kicks was made by a kind of... Not freelancers, but like people who pitched not pitched, but showed the game to Taito later. But I know that this one was actually made by Taito of America staff, and they actually had in Illinois, like in a small office that included developers. And this is worth mentioning because it's very forward-thinking of Taito, who did not have to... I don't know what their rationale was, because they had this huge hit of Space Invaders under their belt, which in North America was a pretty big hit, but it wasn't the same kind of super mega hit that it was in Japan. But that doesn't matter because it was still made tons and tons of bank. But they had the foresight to say like, oh, actually there are people here in North America who've been making games for like the Atari 2600 and other home computers and stuff that actually know how to make games. Like we could assemble a team of people and they could make games for us that we could use. And Zookeeper was one of those games.
Could that be considered the first case of Japanese to Western outsourcing?
It might be. It really might be. It's not like something like Miss Pac-Man where it was kind of like a backdoor type of,
It was official,
right. It was like almost official ROM hack, basically. But it was more like they had this office of people, and like I said, I think it really was in Illinois, and this is what they did, and
they did a pretty good job.
They did a really good job. So Zookeeper is a fascinating game. I really wish I knew the exact time it came out, because there's a interesting, very, very old web page out there that kind of recounts the history of it, and that says 1983, and that seems to be using some of the developers themselves as primary sources. But Wikipedia, which, as we all know, is the sole arbiter of truth in the 21st century, says it's 1982. So I don't know. But I guess it's kind of beside the point, because the game it's kind of like, I don't know, it's a weird kind of reverse or inverse Dig Dug, where you're a zookeeper who is also a bricklayer.
I'd say it's more like reverse Breakout.
I guess, but you're not really deflecting anything.
I'd be careful with the breakout thing, because if you look at the way the animals move, they don't obey breakout rules at all.
No, you're not like bouncing. There's no physics involved in it. So I think that's...
I got a stupid question. Is this like the first game we've ever looked at that's from the golden age of video game arcades?
Nah, there was Galaga.
Oh,
Galaga.
Right,
yeah.
right.
This guy.
Yeah, my...
You're like racist against old games, aren't you?
Well...
That's racist.
Wait, you mean me or Cal?
You're like... that's ageism against old games.
Oh, well...
They all look the same to you, don't they?
Just because...
I play plenty of old games. Me and Mappy, we go way back.
Just because a game is old certainly does not mean it is bad, and the only problem is I'm not sure.
Very clean cut, like upstanding young old game.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an example to the other hoodlums out there.
I mean, I guess the only
I'm looking at you, Major
I think it's Tango
Chaos.
I was just going to say that, it is a little difficult to discuss these older games because they're relatively blood simple, but this one has a bit more variance to it.
But also, they also had, because they were so early, they have the opportunity to invent a whole bunch of new crap. And so that gives them an edge in some ways, because they are very, very inventive often, because they have nothing else to draw from.
Yeah, true.
Unless you're a Space Invaders clone.
Which Taito also made.
Yeah, which we dealt with Galaga, and we talked about that. And that also was ranked very highly. I think that was correctly dealt with. But, I mean, this game is... So basically, it's like you are a zookeeper. You're running around an animal paddock in a zoo. The animals inside said paddock will erode the bricks on the exterior wall of said paddock. And you're trying to...
You mean interior?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's both.
I guess they're all exterior
They
walls,
eat their way through until they break
Unless there's
through.
a divider within the paddock, which there never is. They're all exterior walls. So...
In any case, continue your description.
Yeah, anyway, so it's as you cross over a section of that of the wall, you will always add additional bricks to it, no matter what state of repair or disrepair it's in. But the animals eat through the wall. I don't know what they're doing. They're eating through it. They're peeing on it. What are they doing? But they somehow they are eroding the wall. And they do it really fast. And there's always, I think even on the very first screen, there's always one animal that's already escaped.
Well, by the fourth or fifth screen, they just forget to put the wall in altogether.
It's interesting because it's very... Yeah, that's true. It starts out as just this pandemonium with animals everywhere. But so that's one major part of the game. That part is very similar. It's like a combination of, say, Donkey Kong and Tempest in the weirdest possible way. But it
I've got to say, there must have been Donkey Kong influences in this game, which I'm sure
unquestionably. I think the developers are on the record as saying we had Donkey Kong in mind.
Matter of fact, after you complete enough stages of what could be called the main game, you eventually get to this other screen where a monkey is antagonizing you. So Donkey Kong parody there.
You're oh, by the way, your zookeeper is named Zeke. And your paramour is named Zelda. Zelda in video game history, if I am not mistaken. So, of two. So,
until they make a biographical walking simulator about F. Scott Fitzgerald, I guess that's all we've got for now.
There's F. Scott Fitzgerald's Self-Loathamator.
I dislike his
virtual
work.
reality. Yeah.
He's the most overrated author ever, but that's neither here nor there.
No.
Can we not?
Let's not go here. I'm just throwing off a hot take off the cuff
Throwing
here
off
because
a hot take. What you're doing is scraping a unqualified opinion off the bottom of your shoe and dumping it directly into.
And that's all the time we have for Book Club 1990X.
So the next game we're going to rank is the F. Scott Fitzgerald's. No, there is.
Yeah, there's that Great Gatsby video game. That's actually pretty cool.
You fight the one of the bosses are the eyes of Dr. J.T. Eckelberg. For all you Great Gatsby fans out there, but
of which I'm
anyway,
not.
the
Still better than the Frankenstein NES game. That's my.
Can we talk about the Donkey Kong mini game?
Yeah, so there's these it's basically like Frogger meets Donkey Kong, right? It's conveyor belt platforms that you have to jump on to get to the top. There's a monkey dropping coconuts, and he's somehow bogarted your main squeeze, Zelda. And so if you get to the top of that, you win.
It's kind of a non sequitur too, because it doesn't really fit in any component of the game. It just shows up, and it's not a bonus stage; it's a mandatory stage.
I think it's
just like
I think it's like you're right. I thought it was a bonus stage the first time I played the game.
I want to.
And then I died. I'm like, oh wait, I started back over.
And then if you get far enough, you get another screen where you can possibly earn extra life, but it's like the hardest screen in the game.
Right, that's the escalator.
And the thing of it is, like that would normally in any other game be the one shot bonus level where if you lose, you just go on. But it's also apparently a mandatory level. I actually lost my last life to that screen last time I played this game.
That's
so it's
like
weird.
To the bonus stage or to the monkey stage?
Yeah, to the bonus stage, to the one with the escalators.
It's
so you
it's a real stage. Yeah.
No, that's a real stage. You can die.
Yeah, it's so funny. You either get an extra life or you can lose the game.
High stakes. Yeah, holy sh.
I think based on what I know about the game's development, there was some kind of issue about the people who made it not really knowing how hard it should be, and because they got really good at the game, I'm sure. And they were kind of like, I think the escalator stage was kind of like the final edition. And that
the problem is, like, the cages you have to jump over that spawn the animals just, like, spawn them non-stop, and you're never sure when they're going to spawn or where your safe spots are going to be. And
I believe the whole game is, because it's not, like, true random or anything. I believe you can predict it once you've watched the game, because it tends to have the same pattern over and over, I think. Definitely the collectibles you can pick up always spawn in the same location, so...
It's interesting in that, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's interesting in that, like, the level, each stage, like, the three different types of stages have not only different... The bricklaying stages are... The Tempest-esque stages are actually, like, survival stages. They're not like... It's not like Pac-Man where you're covering territory, and it's not like...
Yeah, you don't even have
Donkey
to place
Kong
the
where you're
minimum
trying to
amount
reach a
of
goal.
bricks or anything. Yeah,
no,
it's like
you don't. You just have to
counts
survive.
Down.
There's like a little like a Mission Impossible-esque fuse at the top of the screen that burns through to the end, and once you get to the end, you're done. And you go to the next stage. And there are like little power-ups in there. There's a net power-up that you can use to catch animals that are on the exterior of the wall and put them back in the middle.
Yeah, every time a bonus item appears, it makes this really loud, weirdo sound. It's like...
It does have a lot of weird Atari VCS kind of style elements to it. But the last cool thing I want to mention about the game is that it has this really trippy color effect on all the walls in the game. In that it's got this like rapid cycling rainbow effect, like descending rainbow kind of effect. And I haven't played the game in the wild, right, on an actual coin-op machine, but I've heard that effect looks really crazy on a proper screen, in that it kind of has this disorienting effect on the player in a way. It's kind of like
a little bit like
1982 version of Rez in a way.
Yeah,
or Hotline Miami for that matter.
Closest thing I can think of at this time that was as colorful was Robotron 2084.
It's weird because it has a Robotron-esque frantic vibe to it, but it is really nothing like Robotron. It is much more like I said, like it's a Tempest meets Donkey Kong kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is insane.
And also, the net is so far more infinitely useful than the hammer from Donkey Kong. That hammer really only just slows you down. It's only there for extra points, but this is practical.
Right.
Well, it kind of is used for the points, because I believe your biggest points come from catching the animals if you're into points.
Yep.
Right.
Well,
Like, the best way to get points is wait for the end level and just like grab a whole bunch of animals and roll them up.
and that's the thing about the types of games from these era is that the high score is what you're going for. There's not really any other major objective.
True. I mean, it's also one of those early has that characteristic of early coin-op games, in that it had a bug that was kind of left in the game on purpose, which is that if you get far enough in the game, when you get to the Donkey Kong Frogger like scrolling platform stage, the platforms become invisible, and that was apparently a bug, but they just left it in the game because it was a way of scooting the player off on their merry way and getting somebody else's quarter into the machine.
That's evil. I didn't get that far. I have no idea.
The interesting thing is that the only way you can tell where the platforms are is that the coconuts that the evil monkey on the top of the screen throws will land on them, and that's how you know, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that level will fill up with coconuts very fast. I would like to mention an element of the controls, which is, it really throws me off. Well, it's interesting. When you jump in this game, unlike, as far as I know, almost any platformer made at the time, you can change your direction in midair.
Oh, yes, that's true.
Yeah, it's practically necessary as well.
Is it the first game where you can change your direction in midair?
I mean, like 82, 83 seems very close to the first. I'm not 100% sure, but
I don't know of a game of this vintage that does that, because even the original Mario Brothers arcade game does not let you do that. Joust lets you do that, but it's kind of because it's got this floaty kind of physics to it. It makes more sense in the context of the game because you're manning a giant kind of quasi-flightless bird.
Yeah, every button you press is a flap.
Right. Right.
It's a really interesting thing, and you can even, and this I think is why it's kind of like maybe bug, or they just like, this is cool, we'll leave it in, because you can jump stationary and then smash a direction and you'll move in that direction. It's really great.
I did not notice that. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that actually, in my mind, puts it really high up there. Because being able to change directions in mid-jump is something that seems obvious to us now in the post-Super Mario Brothers world that constitutes the majority of, of game history. But at the time, in 1982 or 83, especially if it was first released in 82, that's really insane. Because that's not something that happens in reality. It's something that you have to play a lot of games. You're like, I wish I could change directions in mid-jump.
Yeah, no, it only fits the game, because so often you have to make these bizarrely precise jumps that you can't do in a single direction. You kind of have to.
Yeah, I wonder if it was just because you could not beat the Frogger-esque stages unless you could change directions.
It's actually really interesting because those Frogger-esque stages are really they're really bland in terms of like what you get now, but the actual control of the character is really nice. Like, it feels really good for like 83, and you fall too far, you don't die, you just land.
Right.
I think actually when he hits the ground he bounces a little bit, which is kind of interesting.
That's another great detail. That's true. I'm glad. Thank God you're here. I did not appreciate this game for what it was, although I did think very highly of it.
I think it's. I was surprised. I'm glad Mr. Timpot recommended it, because it's suggested we look at it, because it is very.
You can find it, by the way.
My issue with this game is that it feels like the escalator stage is just like this giant brick wall where all progress stops and you can't get any further.
It's true. That is a down. It does not feel as well fleshed out as the other things. I think it was put in there to be.
I almost kind of wish that it was only like the bricklaying stage that was in the game. Most feel like the most fun.
True, although I think the platforming part of it is.
It's a nice break. You can't just have the sort of the zookeeper bits, because that's a bit too samey.
You could, but I think it would have to. The difficulty on that would have to escalate a lot more slowly. It's kind of like a way of saying, oh, yeah, you thought you were good at this? Well, try this. And it's very, very different. Whereas even with Donkey Kong, which predated it, that was like the 4 different stages in Donkey Kong were required the same mechanics to finish. It wasn't like it was throwing you for a loop in a way that this game did, but it still makes sense within the context of the game, because even when you're running around the brick wall stages in the Tempest mode, your character can jump, and you have to be able to jump or else you won't be able to get very far in the game.
Yes.
And that may also be where the changing directions in mid-jump. So there's this kind of weird, like, it's also, I think it might be the first game where you can jump upside down, by the way.
Yeah, it's got the controls were a little bit difficult to wrap your head around. I felt that was probably the
Metal Storm-esque, like reverse or upside down jump.
Yeah, it got a little bit of a headache. I just wanted to mention, this probably won't affect many people, but if you use a joystick that has more than 4 directions, it's extremely hard, because that point between the cardinal directions, it can't figure that out, because it only accepts up, down, left, right positioning. Like,
well, I think the diagonal directions count as cardinal directions, but what you're saying is like the basically between up and right and up and left and down and right and down.
Yeah, if you're using a controller that registers those, then it will probably you won't move, because the emulator, I think, will get confused. So you'll have to do a whole like
right. I mean, that's just an issue with the.
It will be an issue with the emulation rather than an actual machine, which would have only let you put in the 4 directions.
You should you should be able to like adjust or use some kind of USB like kind of override type plug-in to fix that kind of thing, though, which you have to do.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of classic arcade games.
I think it's just worth mentioning the controls can get a bit headachy.
So where do we put this? Like, I feel like I got to put it above Tapper, which I feel like is a very similar game. Not
I
similar,
see
but
that
similar
more
vintage.
variety, or
Way more variety, and it's better it's as well executed, but it has more stuff in it. I really got to put it actually pretty high up there just because of the changing direction thing. But I feel like if I do exclusively on that, I might be wrong, because there might be a game that predates it that did it first.
Yeah.
Here's my thing. I don't know if I'd rank it above Tapper. Like, Tapper does one thing, but it's very good at it, and the Zookeeper does more things, but not all of it is quite as polished.
I can see that. I mean, it doesn't. The difficulty doesn't escalate as fluidly or intuitively as Tapper does, because Tapper only does one thing. So it's just like each stage is just a little bit harder than the one before it. Whereas with this one, it feels like there's kind of a difficulty spike every couple of stages, because you're doing the Donkey Kong levels. And then the escalator levels, which are just like not very well thought out, not very well designed. But they have a big payoff, which is very interesting and kind of unique in this era of games, where you get that extra life if you can finish it. It's guaranteed.
Yeah, it doesn't do point extra life, which is an interesting change from a lot of these games, because usually.
Right.
But yeah, like I do see it around the Tapper era. I think that it doesn't transcend that sort of polish that would put a game of this period up really high, because it is kind of like there's some really great ideas and elements in here and things that would be really big later on, but they didn't quite get it all together. I think it's fair enough. Like,
see, I would actually put it. I would put it between Descent and Wonder Boy and Monsterland, but it's probably way higher than you guys would.
Yeah. I got an idea on how to rank it, but I don't know if you're going to like it. Between NFL Blitz and Clash of Demon Head.
That's a little low, but I think you might be a little close. I'm going to say between between Marvel Land and WWF No Mercy.
Okay, I can take that.
That is a couple clicks higher.
I'll put it below Tapper. Nowhere lower than below Tapper.
Really? Okay, so I'm saying above Tapper, and everybody else is saying below Tapper, but
I'm trying to meet him halfway, because like I do think, like, you can make an argument either way between it and Tapper.
So okay, all right. So it's going right below Tapper, right above
Donkey Kong.
Donkey Kong Country 3. I mean, who can say that this game is not way better than Donkey Kong Country 3? That is a real.
Poor DKC 3, it gets dumped on so much.
Okay, our third game for episode 10 is The Great Gatsby. No, it is the New Zealand story, which was nominated by @SpriteOddity on Twitter. Another super long-time friend of the show. Thank you so much, SpriteOddity. This is another Taito jam, by the way.
Taito Tuesdays. No, I wish.
Real quick, just right now.
Yeah.
Wish this was Tuesday.
I don't like the name of the New Zealand story, and I think the name that NES version got, Kiwi Craze, is way better and way more indicative of what the game actually is.
It sounds like a mobile game.
New Zealand
New Zealand story sounds like a documentary, so I don't know.
That's a good name.
Well, also they turned New Zealand into like a single word, which is weird.
I mean, I don't think it's set in New Zealand, not New Zealand. It's set in some bizarre, like weird, quasi not real New Zealand, which is
like
full
the
of
Mushroom Kingdom version of New Zealand.
Yeah, like because I don't remember New Zealand having that many zoos.
And the most creative name they could come up with was New Zealand without a space between the words. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it was released in arcades in 1988. It is a beautiful game for the time period. I mean, even now, the sprite art is pretty top notch.
Yeah, Taito really excelled in artistic direction,
especially in this time. Like, this is really good.
Taito were really good at making great art without like any sort of like bells and demoscene sort of whistles. Like, there's no like 8 layers of parallax. There's no like crazy stuff going on. No, it's just really crisp, really nice looking sprite art. Even there's not that many animation frames or anything. It's just really nice.
Right. Very, very good character design. That's what they did. Yeah. I think like the Bubble Bobble on up, they felt like character design is where we're going. That's the hill we're going to die on. And but really, I think it goes back to Space Invaders, because those little Space Invaders characters are iconic.
Yeah, they had like 12 pixels in total, and they're still
but they're all still very distinct. They all have their own shapes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they are clearly some kind of like insect or crustacean type thing. And they did a lot with the limited space they had. So really, Taito's sprite art, I hadn't thought about it until this exact point. But I mean, it's always been impressive. Bubble Bobble, amazing.
They just had really good knowledge of how to use colors. Like, very bright and varied without making it look gauche somehow.
It's true. I mean, they have this kind of... what was the name of that woman who did all the original Mac icons? Karen... Anyway, I mean, she's like the sprite art messiah in a sense, but because she was working with two, black and white, and that's it, and that's all she could use, and she made these amazing, really small, low resolution icons and stuff. But Taito was kind of like really, in a lot of ways, like a kind of a kindred spirit. I really got to look this up. Somebody else talk about the mechanics of this game. So
in the New Zealand story, you play as a kiwi bird, as implied by the fact that it's, called Kiwi Craze in Crazy America. And it's, I guess, kind of like it's a really basic platformer, except they changed it into a sort of really strange... the areas are really vertical, and you can fly around by stealing like balloons and stuff. Is the main sort of mechanics.
All right.
Susan Care.
Okay.
Or Carrie. Yeah.
While Cal's gone, Taito did a lot of these games, platformers that were pretty difficult, had a lot of secrets, a lot of hidden items that you had to look out for to do really well. That was kind of their wheelhouse, the Bubble Bobble and Rainbow Islands and games like that.
Yeah, I mean, it is it feels Bubble Bobble-esque, but it's not. It's a much more platformer kind of, it's less, I don't want to say less inventive, because it has a lot of interesting stuff, like all the little things you can ride on, that's really cool. And of course the artwork is awesome, and the character is super duper cute and all that stuff. But I was actually playing Rodland at the same time as I was replaying this. And I was like, oh, Rodland is Bubble Bobble-esque game that has a lot of, but it doesn't have the same level of character to it because it's just like kind of a generic chibi anime girl, character. Although Rockland is one of the very, very few games where you're trying to rescue your own mother. The only other one I can think of would be Psy-Raid for the Game Boy. But Kiwi Craze or New Zealand Story has like just the art alone, I think, puts it really high up there in terms of classic platformer, arcade games.
Yeah, I mean, it does certainly really look good. But as to how it plays, it's kind of in the acquired taste, to say the least. I mean, it does have an actual kind of level structure, except the structure in question is, in my opinion, pretty chaotic. It's
I always think of these kinds of games as giant box levels,
Yeah, it's exactly what it shows on the map in the lower left of the screen there, basically.
I mean,
it really is a
lot
box.
with the giant box. Like Bangai-O, does a lot with the giant box, but
True.
It's still a giant box. That's what it is.
I wasn't really the fond of this game for a few reasons. It's pretty frustrating, and I guess that's understanding for an arcade game. It's just that the level design has you, like, jumping over so many pits of spikes, and you're, like, constantly surrounded by enemies that are, like, shooting at you. You can't really dodge them all that well, and it basically just leads you dying all the time.
Yeah, it is not a very nice game, to say the least. I want to say maybe if your Kiwi had a little bit of a better jump, that some of those spikes wouldn't be so bad, but...
If it gave you, like, 2 hits, that would have been kind of reasonable, but
yeah,
don't.
Yeah, that's right. It's one of those Contra-esque games where you get hit and you die, but you can't fire in multiple directions. You can only shoot left and right. So unlike Contra, so it feels you don't feel like a badass. You do feel like you are often outnumbered and outmaneuvered.
I think it's the thing that makes it kind of like tricks you into thinking, this is like a Bubble Bobble iteration, but it's not. Because Bubble Bobble games, you can only shoot left and right, and you're kind of working in a big box kind of level.
Yeah, exactly. But then again, all of Bubble Bobble's action always took place in a single screen at a time. New Zealand, I almost wish that you could do that for that, because the level structure is, on the whole, kind of bad, kind of amateurish. It doesn't really have particularly cogent level plan in most cases. I don't know. I just really wasn't used to it.
It's got the secret exit thing, though, right?
Secret.
The warp zone.
I read that there were warps after the fact, but I have never found one.
It's interesting because I think they're in all versions of the game except the non-Japanese arcade games. I think
that. Did anyone ever discover that one Easter egg where your Kiwi can go to heaven and there's like an exit that lets you get back into the game?
Yeah, I think that was only in the arcade version. I know the NES one actually doesn't have that, but I never actually got that far, so I don't know what to tell you.
The NES version has Tim Fallon music of, right?
That's right, yeah, definitely. For some reason, Fallon had a temporary stint with Taito for a few of the games that they licensed.
The reason would be that he kicks ass.
Yeah, of course.
His music is like incredible, and like anybody with a brain would hire him to work on their game.
Well, technically, Fallen is a good thing. I just wish he had more than one main track to work with. I mean, it's a cute, bouncy track, but I kind of wish there was a little more besides that in the boss theme.
It's true. Okay, so I mean, where I want to put this is, I like this game mostly just because I like the artwork. I really admire the artwork in terms of just how much it accomplishes with so little to work with. But I feel like you gotta compare it immediately to Rainbow Islands, and I gotta put it below Rainbow Islands.
Right above Rainbow Islands, maybe.
Really?
Or maybe below. How about below? Does this sound okay?
This comes at like pretty much almost the exact same thing we just had just before with Zookeeper. The New Zealand story tends to be just kind of like an asshole to you, but it's...
Well, here's the thing. New Zealand story was released in 1988. And for the kind of game it is, it's not really that special, other than the art direction, which I think is really good, although slightly generic. I mean, you are kind of controlling a marshmallow peep, but but it is very well done in terms of like it's very artistic. But I don't feel like the level design is kind of haphazard.
Yeah, a little weird mechanic I also wanted to mention that goes in hand with the level design. You have to take advantage of the improbable geometry of being able to actually jump through platforms a lot, and like you have to do this a lot to get into like pits of water, and there's no such thing as a ceiling basically, and it kind of gets tricky to dodge spikes sometimes when you have to actually abuse this.
Another thing, I kind of feel embarrassed to admit it, but I got stuck in this game. I don't really know what it wanted me to do.
It wanted you to put in another quarter. That's what it wanted you to do.
No, it's literally cannot make progress. There's like a pit of water you have to go through, but the edge of it, you can't jump onto it. It's just too high. And maybe there was another route you're supposed to take. I just cannot figure out where the game wanted me to go. You're probably supposed to jump
on something, I think, and ride it over, I think is
there were
usually
some enemies on some balloons, but there was a wall in the pit of water, which meant I couldn't go past the wall.
You couldn't knock the enemies off balloons?
Yeah, that's how you get them. You shoot the enemies, and they put the balloons behind you, ride them.
Is that how was that how you're supposed to get over?
No, because the balloons can't go under the water, and you can't go through the wall, so you can't really cross the pit with the balloon.
I got past that level, but I feel like I don't remember.
I mean, you were getting off balloons and stuff, right? Because you can do that.
Yeah, but you just have no way of getting the other side of the pit of water.
It does present this almost puzzle. Like figure out how you're supposed to get through certain areas, which kind of works
well to coin-op arcade games.
No, especially ones where it sends a pretty harsh time limit at you with some asshole with a pitchfork starts.
Very hard.
The time devil, as I call him.
Taito loves doing that. They started doing that in Bubble Bobble, and they kept on doing it.
Yeah, Count Von Beluga, wherever that white ghost was called.
Especially bad though, like. You look at Rodland is later than this for sure, right? By a couple years. So in Rodland, like the timer element to it is mostly in like to get the bonus items, to spell out the bonus letter items. Where if you can collect all the flowers on a screen, then the enemies turn into peaches, and you have a few, like maybe 5 or 6 seconds to catch the peaches, and then every one of them that you, terminate with your magic wand, you get a chance to get one of those little letters. And that's how it deals with the timer mechanic and the speed up mechanic. I don't know that this game just feels like it's got a really cruel clock to it.
Well, being really cruel is kind of the name of the New Zealand story. It's the cute, fluffy bird game that is an absolute sadist to the player.
Yeah, in addition to this wreck of level design, you have all these enemies just flowing out of these gates that you don't know right until they're like right in your face. Although, to this game's credit, you don't take contact damage just by grazing enemies, which I do appreciate at least, but it still feels like they'll spring at you and hit you with some attack you don't expect. I especially hate those stupid bats who drop like a pointy arrow on you the instant they appear, and I've just been mugged by them.
You can kind of hover in this game, not hover, but float.
Yeah, you have to tap the jump button to utilize your wings.
Bobinator, is that the thing that you couldn't? Is that? It's not really important. I'm just
kidding. In any case, I'm happy with it just underneath Rainbow Islands. I think
once
that's fine.
Once the video footage is up, people can see where I got stuck and maybe
is it
what I was doing.
Well, okay, so underneath Rainbow Islands, but is it better than Technocop in eSport?
I think it's a more accomplished game. I think Technocop wears you down just as much, if not more.
I would put it below Road Rash, I think, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Like, I would put it above Haunting starring Poltergeist.
Admittedly, I would much rather play eSWAT than the New Zealand story.
I actually grew up playing a good deal of the NES version Kiwi Craze, and I used to like it back then for as long as I had it, but after many years and coming back to it, nostalgia certainly does not save this game, and it is in fact angered me when I played it. I don't remember it being as frustrating as it has been.
So
man.
how low would you put it then?
Between Mega Man 02 and I Have No Math 9 with Scream. That's just even lower. That's a little cruel, but I feel like the game just kind of scorned me. Like, I'm probably being a bit vindictive. I mean, yeah, I do like its artistic direction, but there's also a good deal about the game's actual mechanics and design that I just think...
Below Nightshade, is that a good compromise?
That was actually where I was originally going to put it.
Better than Live Alive, though, or Live Alive.
I don't.
Are we negotiating this down even further? Is that what we're doing?
Between Live Alive and Mega Man 02, then
I want to put it above Haunting starring Poltergeist, just because I don't want to play Haunting starring Poltergeist ever again.
Oh man,
I might go with that just because I feel bad about ranking it so low. It's not a bad game, to me.
At least Haunting is not, like, sadistic. It's not a massacre game. It's like, yeah, it's fun enough. You can play it. It's fun. This game is just, like, it will wear you down because it is so frustrating.
Yeah, but, I mean, also, like, the little, like ball on a rubber band stapled to a paddle has, like, more replay value than Haunting starring Poltergeist. So,
I know that's true, but
well,
is it the right kind of replay value we're getting here?
I don't know.
The segments where you have to do a lot of underwater movement are just so boring. They really just halt the game. And like the fourth area stages...
But
you sold me. It goes above Haunting Guy.
No. That's
oh, Lord.
He's going to talk again.
I'd make it below. Okay, now let Xerxes go already.
You kind of talked me into it, because now that you mention it, like, I got to put it below Mega Man 02. I agree. Like, I would play I Have No Mouth again, but you actually changed my mind, because I don't want to say New Zealand Story is a terrible game. But
it's not. It's really not.
Okay, so.
All right, whatever.
Who disagrees?
Below Mega Man 0, that's...
I am really amazed.
I'll take it.
I'm really
against.
No, 4. We're all unanimous on this now, right?
Well, no, Cal didn't say that. He said.
Okay. All right.
He
acquiesced to the reality of 3 of us being. Okay, so
that's how it is.
We're done.
All right, and I get to gloat that I've actually convinced Xerxes for once instead of being pilloried as I was with Super Mario Brothers 3. But
yeah, let it not be said that I am unfair. So I don't know I can't say very much in my defense, other than that I can be convinced as a person. That's the one redeeming quality I have. Okay, our fourth and final game is Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back. I'm assuming Cortex is a figure of significance in Crash Bandicoot lore.
Yeah, Dr. Neo Cortex, the big bad, Crash's arch rival, the Dr. Wily to his Mega Man, if you will.
I also believe he's also Crash Bandicoot's creator, if I remember the creation myth of the Crash Bandicoot character.
He impregnated a female Bandicoot?
I believe he impregnated Tawna.
They dropped her fast.
Well, we'll get into that. So
right.
Crash
This
Bandicoot...
is Crash 2. We don't get to talk about Tawna. Sorry,
no, we
Paul.
do, actually. Crash Bandicoot 2 which was developed by Naughty Dog, published by Sony Computer Entertainment of
And
America,
Universal Interactive.
whatever they are, in 1997, I think. Is that correct?
Right.
So it's a big seller. It's notable, according to Wikipedia, for being the best-selling Western-made game for the PlayStation, having sold 800,000 copies in Japan, which is amazing because Japan only has 400,000 people in it.
That brings me to a small rant, of which I might have more than one.
Well, let's. Oh God.
Is it okay if I go?
Well, can I just finish my preamble here?
Yes, go ahead.
Like, because I'm going to do some more introductory info. So, which I find weird because you'd think that Twisted Metal 2 would have been the biggest selling game.
I thought Final Fantasy VII might have been that, honestly.
Western development.
Oh, of course, jeez. I already am failing. I'll shut up now, forever.
Apparently, also according to Wikipedia, which means it is 100% true, Coco the whatever was created for this game because Sony of Japan was quote unquote uncomfortable with Tawny. Was it Tawny? Is that it? Or
Tawna, Tawna.
Tawna, the band, was she a Bandicoot or was she some kind of interspecies romance? Tawna, the Bandicoot, was too super sexy, according to Wikipedia, to be hanging out with Crash. I have no idea what that means.
She had breasts the size of a planetoid.
Yes, but why would that trouble the nation of Japan is what I'm asking.
That's a really good question. I don't want to dwell on this too much.
This is also the country that censored all the sex scenes in God of War, so you tell me.
I think it's just because they didn't do it, like, or are they just not into anthropomorphic boobs on marsupials? I don't know. I don't know. These are questions maybe I don't want answered. Anyway, like, so they created the character of Coco, right? Who is, I guess, as far as I play the game, it's just a disembodied head.
She's in the intro.
She's in the intro.
So I gotta throw this right out here. Like, I don't like the Crash Bandicoot games. I was actually but I don't have a strong opinion about them because I wasn't aware that anybody cared about them still.
Don't worry, super fans. We'll be locking him in the cage shortly.
No, it's fine. Like, I totally understand that I'm
Me, on the other hand, I'm going to be coming to this with a heavy positive bias, because this was like the first PS1 game I played that was not Star Wars Masters of Terras Kasi or a demo disc.
Oh
and
my
the PS1
God.
is pretty much my favorite console, so I like this game very much.
The first games you played for the PlayStation were Star Wars Master of Terras Kasi in a demo disc. That's like saying like the first movie you saw was the Tidy Bowl commercial. You know, like I don't know. But yeah, sorry. I don't know.
I always felt like even nowadays, like the classic Crash games always get kind of a bad rap.
Do they? I thought nobody cared about them one way or the other. That's what surprised me.
Crash is one of those franchises where they kept making bad games. So every so often, people would go to your game retailer and be like, "Hey, they released another crap game. Look at that."
Does it defeat the Sonic ratio of good classic games to everything else?
Kinda, yeah, because
there's not as many of them, right?
No,
if you want to go on ratio, Sonic might actually lose out because there's so much crap that Sonic has been involved with.
That's what I mean. Like, there's not as many Crash games that could be...
Yeah, that could be
disappoint you,
like genuinely bad.
Lately, though, I've noticed like more of a negative opinion towards the PS1 games, which I don't really feel is entirely fair.
No.
I feel like it's a bit of revisionism going on.
Yeah,
I agree.
It's the Nintendo revisionists. They always show up every generation to shit on everything.
It's true. Nintendo 64 was where it's at, dude.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but you know why? I can tell you why. It's because the people that own PlayStation were like cool teenagers who just don't give a crap now.
They grew up and got married and like moved on with their lives. Whereas like Nintendo 64 fans, I mean, what did we do? I
have
personally am
both.
still mowing lawns to make ends meet.
I am
so-
Switzerland in this argument.
here's the thing, like about Crash Bandicoot games, is this is what surprised me. It wasn't that people had a really positive opinion about them. It was that people had an opinion about them. I did not understand that. Like, I looked at them as being, well, this is an acceptable game. Like, it's an obviously ugly character, terrible character design.
That's
It's basically a pair of googly eyes attached to a torso.
He wears his ridiculous shorts.
The shorts are the least of his problems. I think the bigger problem is that he has the disembodied Captain Crunch eyebrows.
Well, it's important to know in terms of, if you want to call him ugly, that's fine. But the actual physicality and presence, like the animation of the character, was hugely impressive on the PlayStation 1. I mean, when you're looking at characters just kind of melting potato face people is like the order of the day. You have a character who has a face that actually kind of operates.
Although you can't see it, you see his ass.
Yes, you see his ass most of the time, except when he runs at the screen.
Time. Yeah, when he runs at the screen. In other words, the worst stages of any game.
I want to say real quick in favor of the character design, I like how he's not like most other mascots at the time. He's not like super cool and super marketable. He's kind of dumb and kind of deranged.
His name is Crash Bandicoot. He's the most focused group.
Yeah, what do you mean he's not marketable? He's like a cool surfer guy. That is like the absolute textbook 90s marketable.
Like the marketing materials. He's not like that at all in the actual game.
Honestly, he's kind of a dork, and he's a bit of a dork.
Really,
and I think this. But no, I kind of do think that almost works in his advantage. It not necessarily makes him more likable, but makes him less obnoxious.
That I'm pretty sure was invented just so this game could exist.
They're a real animal. I live in Australia. I've seen a Bandicoot.
What if his name was like Crash Honey Badger or Crash Hyena? Like, it wouldn't make any damn difference, except Bandicoot sounds cooler.
Crash Tasmanian Devil?
He looks a lot like a hyena, actually, if you change the color of his
He really
skin.
is a hyena. He probably was, like, Crash Hyena, and the whole game was about collecting, like, animal carcasses.
Well, I can't remember. I believe they went through a bunch of different animals trying to pin down what they wanted to make Crash, if I remember my Crash history.
I believe it was focus group number 22, in which they narrowed down the Bandicoot, because people are like, Bandicoot sounds extreme.
Hang on.
Yogurt from that animal. Here's the thing. Like I said, I did not dislike this game. I don't dislike this game. I'm just surprised that anybody still cares about these games. I don't know that they're that good.
Well, I mean, you have answered your own question by quoting sales figures, which is a lot of people play Crash.
That doesn't mean anything. Like, a lot of... Look... If you want to talk about sales figures,
PlayStation All-Stars came out, one of the
Teenage
biggest
Mutant Ninja Turtles #1 was one of the best-selling games of all time. And it's a dog turd of a game. But it's sold a ton of copies, so that it's ubiquitous. That's a cultural milestone.
Don't the fact that these games are going to get remade mean anything in this?
No. Everything gets
like Crash Bandicoot. I know you didn't care, but people like him. I don't know.
Here, let me.
Games don't sell 7 million copies for no reason.
Here's the problem. I think also is that I'm too old to have Crash Bandicoot is anything other than a very cynical marketing ploy.
I was going to bring this up, but not related to Crash Bandicoot's character himself, but just because I know you don't get the mechanics as much with this game.
That's true. I don't.
Let's talk about the game a bit.
I think we should.
The game is about traveling down a corridor in which the camera is directly behind your character, which means that anything that you have to avoid, you can't see because it's right in front of you, and the titular Bandicoot is between your eyeballs and the thing you're trying to avoid.
Okay, there are only a couple of places that I personally promise the camera. There's any time you have to go backwards, which includes all the chase levels, and some of the sewer levels where you're hanging on things. It's kind of hard to see things then. Other than that, though, I had an okay time with it.
Too a lot. I mean,
a lot of people like the game. That's what surprises me. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, the important thing, and again, this is why this is kind of going to fall into the important category. Crash Bandicoot 1 is the second game that I owned on the PlayStation 1. So right from the onset, I'm like, yeah, Crash, I like this game. And your choices for a good platformer when Crash Bandicoot 1 came out
had you played Super Mario 64, and I'm not just saying that because
I think it's interesting though, because Crash and Super Mario 64 are like two very different solutions looking at the same problem: how to handle platforming in 3D.
right.
I had played. I didn't own an N64. You know, I'm not insanely super mega rich. I didn't own a billion consoles all at once. But you know, you did play other people's Mario 64. You played it, and it was, you know, it was a great game. It was really fun. But you went back and you played Crash, and you still liked Crash, which is a
I had both.
You know,
I think
that's
you're both
the thing.
good.
I really loved a lot of PlayStation games, and I was not a N64 like purist. I felt like, and I got a PlayStation eventually, but I did Crash Band. Like I never like when I got a PlayStation about I think I had one about maybe a year and a half or 2 years after the N64 was launched in North America. So I was a little bit late to the party, but that meant I could go back and just get a bunch of games for cheap because there was also Funkoland at that time. You can get a bunch of stuff that you missed. You know, what I went back to was not Crash Bandicoot. Like I tried it, but I was like, I don't want to play this. I want to play Twisted Metal. I want to play Symphony of the Night. I want to play Final Fantasy VII. I want to play... I was more into Nightmare Creatures than I was into Crash Bandicoot. Like I just can't.
It is a game that has to click with whatever you're specifically looking for, and I don't think that like it is like a precise platforming game, but
Precise platforming game where your character is in front of the things you're trying to avoid.
Yeah, but the thing that you're trying to jump on is always going to be in the right spot to land on. You look at it, and if you can't see it, you're going to land on it. That's how it works. You can't
see it because the game requires depth perception.
If you don't have faith in the level design and you try and overcorrect, you're going to fall into a pit. But that's not usually what happens. See, the thing is, Super Mario 64 is really slippy and slidey and sloppy, and it has giant platforms to compensate.
But you're never in your own way.
I don't know. The camera sometimes gets drunk in that specific game.
Right,
I think
but you can stop what you're doing and refocus the camera. Whereas in Crash Bandicoot, your camera is always...
Yeah, but it never flips out on you. The camera is always going to be going... It's a nice, predictable camera. You know what it's going to do. It's not going to surprise you and be like, actually, I'm upside down.
That's how you play the game. My point is that the only reason why you think of the game as being fair and the camera is being where it needs to be is because you played it probably several dozens of times each stage when you were 9 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old, or younger. What I'm saying is that's not a fair assessment of the game because it's not like that.
I give it a fair objective assessment anyway, and you can't either because you're
No, but I did play the game after having played earlier 3D platformers and also being old enough not to like being able to afford other games if I didn't like it.
I mean, look, okay, so the other game I had, which is interesting because this ties into it. The other game I had was actually Jumping Flash 2, which is a similar but completely different kind of platformer.
That is okay, all right. So, I mean, look, on the PlayStation, yeah, okay. But also, Jumping Flash 2, at least the game was designed around the whole, I'm going to jump really high and then slowly land on this thing.
Yeah, it has a different, it has a mechanic. But see, the thing is, I'm convinced that I mean, you can go back and I've played Crash Bandicoot, on and off different versions of it.
Disclaimer, Super Mario 64 is good. I'm not going to deny that. But one thing about Crash I like is that the controls feel a lot tighter, and your moveset is generally a lot tighter. You have exactly what you need. And Mario 64, your controls are a little bit floatier and a little bit slippier, like Cal said. And you have, so many moves you really don't need.
No, you need them. No, you do need them. The game is built around those moves. You can do the wall jumps and the stomps and the everything. Crash Bandicoot is just Donkey Kong Country, except you're right behind Donkey Kong. You know what I mean?
I think Crash is a better game than Donkey Kong 64.
Well, yeah, but Donkey Kong 64 is not a good game. Crash is a good game. I'm not going to say it's a bad game. I'm just saying that...
You kind of said that a bunch of times.
Okay, that's true. All right. I'm going to say that Crash Bandicoot is a it's a bad game in the sense that it is way worse than the surprisingly positive opinion I found it. But I mean, it's not a.
My argument would be it's a different kind of game. I mean, if you're just going to say, well, one of them is a open, quite less linear, wide open spaces, throwing yourself all over the place platformer, versus a game that is basically a very condensed, linear, like sequence of platforming that you are supposed to be pretty on the mark about, but it does, it gives you lots of lives, lots of continues, or it gives you an actual save system, which I think I should mention. Compared to Crash 1, this game actually has a save system. So
that is true. That makes a big difference.
It's a big difference. It added the slide. Your character does have a shadow, if I remember correctly. There are things that are there to kind of help
works. You. Yeah. I mean, the depth perception thing, I think, is a bigger problem than people who grew up playing the game can admit. In the same sense that, like, I was willing to tolerate a lot of things of early NES games that a lot of players now would not be able to tolerate.
You were very tolerant of Earthbound Beginnings on our last podcast.
Yeah, okay, that's a better example because that's much more in my wheelhouse. Where
certainly, I wouldn't, you wouldn't look at someone and say, "Well, you don't enjoy Crash Bandicoot because you're an idiot." Like that's not true.
No, and I don't think that people who love Crash Bandicoot are idiots. I'm not. I mean, although I am deeply and unapologetically unfair to this game, I am not unfair to the people who like this game. Like I am not denying your opinions. I just don't know.
Can we agree on one thing?
Yeah.
This game looks amazing. Can we agree on that?
For a PlayStation game, it's very nice looking.
If you dug up Tex Avery's cores, reanimated him, explained to him what video games are, and just let him do it, make a game.
Crash is a very lively character, and they did a smart thing in this game, because from the first game, they went, all right, forget it, we're not going to have a location, instead we're just going to have a bunch of places that you go to, so there's a really nice set of levels in this game. There's
right, and it lets you choose which one, so you can...
Yeah, that's an interesting progressional thing. This game, you've got 5 levels, I think, that you get to choose between, then you have to fight a boss. But each level has a really obvious collectible that you have to get to complete the level. But you're encouraged to replay the level to get the
Don't you have a choice of which collectibles you get?
Sorta.
You can get multiple collectibles in one run. But to progress through the game, to get through most of the levels, you just have to get the blatantly obvious crystal.
Right. You're never going to miss a crystal unless you try.
Right.
But in order to get the proper finished 100% super ending, you have to go through and collect a whole bunch of other extraneous crap. But 99% of the game, you can get through without having to do any collecting, which I think is a nice compromise in terms of collectathons.
Although you don't really have to travel that far within a level to collect things because the levels are about the size of what? It's like running through a department store, except it's all just hallways.
Well, the interesting thing about the game is the way they hide and move elements around is just you actually do have to explore the level, which I think is really cute. I think there's also a time trial thing. You have to get to a certain part of the level.
That was 3. That's the third game.
No, not time trial. There's crystals that disappear if you don't get through them fast enough or something.
Oh yeah, I think both.
Yeah, that is
River
true.
levels have that.
Yeah, which to me is irritating.
Some of the levels really obscure conditions for actually getting the second gem. I know there's one stage you can't to get one gem you can't break a single box. You're never going to figure that out without looking at game FAQs or something like that.
I think it tells you you've taken a box or something. It's really weird. The end game message is it's flipped around and it's kind of hey, you got.
Oh yeah, at the end, at the end of most stages, it tells you how many of the question mark boxes you got.
Yeah, and this one it tells you a number of 0 or something, and it's hey, what? No, I like that because I think it also this again is just separating it with PlayStation games more. It gives you an encouragement to replay the levels without being too forcing you through it. Because a lot of collectathon games are no, if you don't collect these items, you don't even get to finish the level. No, this game's it does.
You're never locked out of content for not getting all the collectibles except the ending.
And I don't know how many Xerxes played through, but the bosses are nice. I think that they're well done for the most part.
I mean, they're kind of. I feel like the bosses are sort of not that. I only did the first 2, so maybe they get much better.
Kind of easy, but they're well designed. They're very.
they're interesting. I mean,
that's what I mean. Like, they're not the same character. That they all have like a puzzle solution, and I think that's always nice to have like a boss that has solutions. And I think there are standards. Sort of, you hit it like a few times.
I just. Okay.
I know you don't like Crash Bandicoot. You don't like anything.
I don't
about
like
Crash
it, but I don't. I should not have disrespected it the way I have. I just want to make this part of the podcast more entertaining, because otherwise it's just going to be everybody like.
I hate to tell you.
Oh, that was fine for Earthbound, but Crash Bandicoot gets vomited on. Oh, there are 2D segments in Crash Bandicoot as well, usually, like side-scrolling bits.
Lovely, yes.
I do want to say, though, I don't mind the whole corridor thing, because it's how you do with 2D side-scrolling 3D.
Well, it's how you deal with. It's the least inventive possible solution to that problem. It's how you do it with like a limited staff, which is probably the reason why the original.
I think there was only like 11 people in the original Crash or something. Like, it was a very small.
We've got
number.
like 11 people, and then like Jerry's pet turtle to work with. So here's how. Like, no, I mean that's the thing I do respect about Crash Bandicoot most of all, is that it stuck with it didn't overreach its boundaries. It didn't say like, well, we're going to make this as it's going to be everything to everybody. And it's like, no, it's going to be like a kind of weird behind the back corridor 3D platformer, but we're going to do the best we possibly can with this thing. And they did. That is as good as you're going to get with that model, which is, I think, why you don't see too many more games like this, unless you count kind of third person behind the back kind of endless runners.
Which, they have made an interesting slight.
Which I don't have a very high opinion of, but I do think that they owe a lot to Crash.
Yeah, there's elements of that. And can we rank this?
I mean, everybody else speak first, because it doesn't really matter what I think.
I was thinking about this even before recording. I think I know exactly where I'm going to put it. I don't want to run this by you guys.
Okay.
I want to say between Descent and Wonder Boy and Monsterland, and I'm not budging from that.
Wow, you put it lower than I would. I would put it underneath Alien Soldier.
What?
Yeah, eat it. What? You want some of this?
Right underneath. You're saying Super Castlevania 4. Crash Bandicoot.
I prefer Crash Bandicoot to Castlevania as a general rule. What are you going to do about it?
If I'm being completely biased here, I would also put it above Super Castlevania 4.
Well, you
My
should.
7-year-old self would agree, but if I want to be fair and objective, I would put it below Descent.
Like, I'm gonna put it where I would, this is Crash Bandicoot.
Does it innovate? It's not an innovative game.
The best Crash Bandicoot of the Crash Bandicoots. It's probably the best
Crash Bandicoot is like saying like this is the best like Geo Metro of all cars Geo produced in the 1990s.
Hold it. I really feel like I have not spoken very much throughout this.
Because you haven't. You're feeling this way.
I just feel like anything I say would sort of just be parroting either Bob or Cal at this rate. Because
Satinga.
All right. Well, let me.
Basher.
Well, let me just put it this way. Can you think of any other game like Crash on the PS1 that came anywhere near close to what it was trying to do? I would say that not even Spyro, as beloved as that was quite on the level of Crash, to be honest.
Well, Spyro is very much a Mario 64, very much a collectathon game condensed and put on the PlayStation in a very quality, workable fashion. I think Crash is a completely different kind of platformer that you either like the style or you don't. And I know someone does
Crash is as to Donkey Kong Country as Spyro is to Banjo-Kazooie.
Decent way of putting it.
Well,
So take
okay.
you didn't number it out there.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't. I'm sorry, I should have said more, but I do have to say on the whole, by and large, I agree with Bob and Cal. I will say that I'm not quite as big fans of Crash as they are, but I do really acknowledge that they were fantastic games, and, back when I had absolutely nothing to do but play video games as a kid, which honestly isn't that much different from now, except I have a job, but I really did enjoy Crash, 2 in particular, which is worlds, almost a world above the first game, which, let's be honest, is pretty rough and way too difficult, especially if you're trying to 100% it.
2 fixes pretty much every single problem in the first game.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if Xerxes booted up Crash 1 compared to Crash 2. But
well,
did.
I played
You'd
both
go insane on Crash
when
1.
they were new. Crash 1, I mean, granted, that's like, Marmoset's like trip through like trippy, wavy, gravy, hallucinogenic dirt jungle.
I feel bad about this, but I will accept below Alien Soldier if everyone else is okay with it.
I
It's my bias show if I put it there.
Yeah.
How can you consider it even better than Castlevania 4?
I'm going to...
Bandicoot 2? Hearing about this game is like saying you care deeply about the opinion of Diet Coke. Like, it is not I don't know.
I'm sorry to be a Judas here, but I gotta agree with Xerxes on this. Then again, I am biased towards the Castlevania series, but I would...
As a longtime fan of Crash Bandicoot 2, and someone who has played the game recently, and, it's not like I played it 15 years ago, and I'm like, yeah, I still probably like it, because I didn't play it recently. No, I did play it pretty recently. I still like it. I'm not gonna pick it lower for I'm not going to say any lower for myself. We can negotiate it down, but that's where I would personally put it.
I'm not going below Descent. That's final.
Okay.
Because look, I mean, you got like a little lower than that.
Here's the thing. I'll meet you. I'll put it above Super Mario Land.
Okay.
Because I recognize that Crash Bandicoot is doing something and perfecting something that in a way that Super Mario Land couldn't and wouldn't do. Super Mario Land is very much working off of a formula, whereas Crash Bandicoot was inventing something.
Well, they had to try. They did try.
Well, I mean, Super Mario Land, they were trying really hard to make a game that you could look at on basically a calculator and make sense out of. But it's more of a technical achievement, I think, than it is a game design achievement, whereas Crash Bandicoot 2...
2 is very important. Crash Bandicoot 1 would be significantly lower.
Right, it would be much lower. But Crash Bandicoot 2 is I mean, I got to give it. Like, I would sooner say I'm going to play more Crash Bandicoot 2 than say I'm going to play Super Mario Land for the 50th time all the way through.
Well, I'm not gonna try and argue with that. I do think it's a good game.
Who says it's seriously Worms Armageddon?
I mean, it is tricky because I do like Space Harrier a lot as well. It all came down to just personal feeling. So Super Mario Land just above is okay. I can handle that.
I can work with that. I'm happy with that.
Below Space Harrier, above Super Mario Land. Satenga,
right. That's
just curious. Not that it matters, but Satenga, what do you think?
So I'm going to agree. I think that's a fair assessment. Although I do want to tack on a writer here. Even if I'm not the biggest Crash fan, I do think that his first 3 games, 2 in particular, are quite entertaining. And I honestly like Crash Bandicoot more than the Uncharted series, which has become Naughty Dog's current wheelhouse, which I honestly think is kind of overrated.
Okay, I mean, but here,
let's not beat up.
Let me throw you guys a.
I can. I will.
Bone here. Do you guys? Do most of us believe that Crash Bandicoot 2 is better than Space Harrier?
I'm not I never played much Space Harrier, so I would.
That's not a fight I want to fight.
No, I like Space Harrier more. I've got to agree with you there.
Space Harrier is very much
I think Space Harrier is it's so tough because if you were to say if I had to play a game for a couple of hours, I'd probably take Crash 2.
Yeah, me too.
That's the thing. It's really tough. It's just really a coin flip for me if you had to do that because it's that is such a decision It's totally I wake up one morning and I'd be like, I prefer Space Harrier. Next morning, Crash 2.
The thing about Space Harrier, and the reason why I'd still put Crash 2 below Space Harrier, it's not really so much about gameplay or which game I would rather play. It's more about which game has character, which game has soul, which game has heart. And Crash Bandicoot 2 has about as much heart as a Skechers commercial. I
agree with that. It's
once they ripped out Torna, it was all downhill.
It is a super focus grouped, mid 90s Poochie the dog kind of game.
I mean, look at what they've done with the art style. Look how good the game looks.
It definitely got worse. Is the ... It's really funny.
Right. I mean, the best thing about Crash are those commercials with the guy in the Crash. Like,
oh, I love those commercials.
Those are great.
Those were great.
I mean, that was really good. They were building on what Sega of America had already done in the early 90s, but they did it very well, and it really was good, and it was clever, and it was of its time, but it was great. But the character design, everything else, like artistically about Crash Bandicoot, is very, very dull to me.
It can be dull. The actual execution is quite good. The technical level of Crash is very high.
Whereas Space Harrier is such a like LSD trip of a 80s arcade.
It's a wonderful world they produce, definitely.
It is. You are welcome to the fantasy zone.
I don't know. My counter argument is, what does Space Harrier really do once you get past the whole scaling thing?
Cyclops Mammoth.
I mean, then you get attacked by fighter jet robot things. This is a lot of stuff going on.
Centipedes as far as the eye can see. I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm torn. I feel like...
Crash is definitely like, if you look at a lot of the mascot platformers on the 16 bits, they sort of just ripped parts of those out and just made a character out of those parts.
It is. Like I'm not a big fan of Rare's collectathons either. Like, I would not... Like, although I'd probably rather play Banjo and Kazooie, I would give Crash 2 an edge just because it's different. Whereas Banjo Kazooie is... It's not different. It's just.
Can I before we wrap up, I would like to say about Crash Bandicoot, because it's something that I was thinking of recently. It's really interesting because the recent Mario releases have actually sort of pulled in closer to Crash Bandicoot, which is really strange. But the Super Mario 3D Lands or Worlds or whatever, the Wii U one, that's more like Crash Bandicoot, which is so interesting to me that they actually sort of merged Crash Bandicoot and Mario together recently to make like a kind of...
I mean, it's more like Crash Bandicoot in the sense that they created like the levels are courses to go through. But there's so much more you can do in this level.
There's a lot more, but they took this sort of concept, like they drew in to a more linear game. From what I remember, Miyamoto looked at Crash 1 at the, when they were... when they were announcing Mario 64, whenever that period was at like whatever E3 or whatever, and he was like, wow, your game's so great or whatever. Like he was really enthusiastic about it.
I think he would have had to have liked it. He did not like Donkey Kong Country, but I think that was more about the art design.
Yes, definitely.
Anything else. Famously, Ken Kutaragi was like, say Crash 1 was like I don't know what his exact words were, but to paraphrase him, this game is a dog turd, and I cannot believe Sony wants to associate itself with it. But Ken Kutaragi made how many games? Like 0? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure that that's a fair...
Yeah.
So right below Space Harrier, right above Super Mario Land.
I think that's as good as we're going to...
fight Crash, but you didn't.
Yeah, I think that's as good as we're going to get for now.
My hat goes off to thee.
My 7-year-old self is pleased, and now he's going to go watch SWAT Cats.
That's all for this episode of HardcoreGaming101.net's Top Games Podcast. Special thanks goes out to Tin Pot Gamer, Solhoff, Sprite Oddity, and Unreal EJ, who I don't think I actually mentioned for Crash Bandicoot 2, did I?
like those were some great nominations this time, though.
Yes.
And thanks to those of you who have nominated games but we haven't gotten to yet. You know who you are. We love you. We will get to you soon. And thanks as well to my lovely co-hosts and compatriots, Satenga, Cal, and Bobinator, as always. The fan favorites.
We're really the only guys who are around every weekend, so...
yourself.
Fan favorites by default. Oh, and thanks as well to our editor, Jeff Rudd, our theme song composer, Muteki, and of course, the support and feedback of listeners like you. You can support the podcast by making a small monthly donation to patreon.com/HG101. I know I do. And by following at HG_101 and at GC9X on Twitter, as so many of you have. But most importantly, help us claw our way into the zeitgeist by getting on iTunes and subscribing to at HG101 and giving us a 5-star review. Do it, or I'll replace Coco with an even less sexy marsupial. Until next time, keep keeping it real. And after you have ranked us and rated us on the podcast client of your choice, but especially iTunes, you can go to YouTube and check out the GC9X home video, which I believe is doing a video version done by none other than our own Bobinator and Cal.
I worked very hard on them. Please validate me.
Yes, please do. They're great. It's a great way to, because you've already listened to the podcast and you think you've absorbed every last droplet of knowledge, and you have, except you could also watch somebody play the game while we do it. So
you get to see how bad I am at video games for yourself.
Thumbs up everything, like, share, subscribe, and Snapchat, ad blocker. What else do the kids like?
MySpace.
They like PewDiePie, but ignore him.
MySpace, Friendster,
ICQ.
What's that like local chatting client? Yik Yak? Yes, Yik Yak. You just get on Yik Yak and
GitHub's apparently popular for file sharing.
Neopets.
That's what programmers.
We
might have some programmer fans here.
Napster, Kazaa.
LimeWire. Get us on
podcast on Kazaa.
Direct Connect Plus. Definitely. Yeah, Usenet is great. You can get us on. What's our phone number for Usenet?
I don't know. We'll have to ask.
And we can't forget AOL Kids.
Oh, yes. Keyword HG _101. The underscore doesn't need to be there, actually, with keywords, right? It's just, I don't know. Can somebody teleport me back to 1994?
I'll go with him, but I want to stay.